Nice seeing you.
Not in hip, just on my shin there where I hit the step.
That's all doing better now.
I think if half come in and half stay out for us, we'll switch over.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys, you five, I'll come in first.
On your legs, so loud.
Okay.
Go, Jeff.
Yeah, let's go. Not be shy.
As you can see, I'm not breathing at the moment. I want to start in time for the new release. So I'm just starting to get ready. This is a hen that's got a problem with the eye, so I'm re-dosing it.
Then the red eye.
It's closed completely. I don't think I'm getting it right. That's the problem. I'm putting ointment on, but it's not helping a lot. And sometimes it's contagious, you know. Gets onto the other birds. So I isolate it. But I find eventually you've got to knock the heads off. Unless it closes completely, then they can breathe. But if it's always sore, it doesn't come right. The hell of it. Up to the birds.
Very good.
Yeah.
I think the best.
Yeah. Same time. You want to go inside with that camera? You can go in if you like.
That's a good.
The dark green. Yeah.
95.
You see, he lost his flights too. The flights is bloody dropped out.
Well, you should say you stop the inbreeding, and I don't think that you can ever develop a stud of anything, whether it's budgies, canaries, chickens, horses or dogs, if you don't inbreed. There's a lot of confusion about inbreeding. I think the best definition I've ever heard is that whenever you breed relatives, it doesn't matter how far apart they are, it's inbreeding. And then there's this confusion about line breeding and inbreeding. It's actually the same thing. The only difference, there's no difference actually, because they're both forms of inbreeding. The trouble with line breeding is you can't do it with budgies. And so when people tell you they line breed, they're talking rubbish. They can't line breed. Because what line breeding means is that if you take let's talk about cattle or horses. Let's talk about cattle. If you take a bull and you have one bull and say 20 cows, that bull serves all the cows. Now you can't do that with budgies because we have the pair concept. You've got to have a cock and a hen. You can't put one cock with 20 hens. In any case, they don't live long enough. If you look at some of the big studs of horses or cattle, I mean, the horse is a good example where they talk about a racehorse that's gone to stud now, stopped racing. They put him with a lot of mares. They last, they can live for 8, 9, 10 years and just keep servicing the cows. And what happens when a good bull, when he's finally finished, they often use his son as the next sort of bull. So that son will actually breed with his mother, his auntie, his sister. So to say that line breeding is a watered down version of inbreeding is rubbish. In fact, it's just the same. It's just that you do it in a different way. With budgies, we can't do that because, as I said, A, they don't live long enough, and B, you can't put one cock with 7 hens unless you colony breed. And then that will happen. A cock will go and trade a lot of hens, but you also don't know what the hell's going on. So because we pair our birds, we've got to look more at inbreeding. And if we want to inbreed, then we've got to keep good records. I've got all my records on a computer, which is nothing new. A lot of people have. But since I came back from South Africa, at least came back from England in 1990, I came here. Actually, the end of 89, but I started breeding in 91. In 1990, I brought birds from Gerald Binks, from Malcantine. Not Malcantine. No, the guy in Cape Town. Menekini. I bought birds from Binks and I bought birds from Menekini. And then about 3 years later, I bought some birds from Depina. So apart from that, I can count on one hand the number of birds I bought. And I just took some records this morning. Mike has actually seen this. But I from the Menekini cock, I've bred 726 related birds. So I've got 726 birds with Menekini blood somewhere in them. 672 from Binks and 173 from Depina. So you see my birds are a hell of a closely related, and I think you notice they all look similar. They're not all the same, obviously, but I'm beginning to get them looking similar. And that's really what you want to try and achieve, so that if you have 5 or 6 light greens and you enter a light green in the show, you should be able to take anyone of those 5 or 6 because they should all be similar. And the only way you're going to achieve that is to inbreed and to breed and to try close together.
What was the quality? Sorry, if it was the original birds.
I'll come to that. The Binks birds had tremendous style, but they didn't have size. They had no shoulder. And I was judging in Cape Town, and I saw a cinnamon hen, in fact. When I finished judging, I was walking around, looking at the birds. And the cinnamon hen caught my eye, and I asked Bruce Cole, and he was with me, who owned it, because I hadn't got the catalogue. We went and looked it up, and it was Menekini. And then I started looking at these birds, and I saw they all had big shoulders. They were quite rough birds, but they had big shoulders. So I went out to his house on Saturday or Sunday, and I bought some, and they actually clicked well. The Binks birds and the Menekini birds were compatible. The only problem was I got long tails, more than I wanted. And it definitely came from Menekini. I mean, I proved that because when I got from Gerald, I got 3 cocks and 4 hens, and I did pair cock and hen together from Binks, and none of them had long tails. Wherever I put the Menekini bird, I got long tail, and I understand because he told me that he got it from Ormerod. He got some birds from Ormerod in England, and he produced these long tails. Anyway, I managed somehow to eliminate quite a large degree the long tail, but not totally. And then when I brought the birds from the Pina, that cleaned up, it really cleaned them up, cleaned up the tail problem. And funny enough, they weren't really good-looking birds, the ones from the Pina. They weren't as good-looking as the Binks birds or the Menikini birds, but they were really typey birds, and they clicked well with my birds. So that they were good birds. I actually, when I lived in England, I was a neighbour of Gerald Binks's, almost. We lived very close together. So whenever he went away, I looked after his birds, and when I went away, he looked after mine. So I knew his birds pretty well. And when I came out, I selected with him the birds I wanted to bring. And he was quite happy to sell good birds because I wasn't going to compete with him. I was moving them to South Africa. So I paid quite a lot of money, but it was worth it because I got some good stock. I think the next thing is with inbreeding is record keeping. It's hell of important. As I said, I've now got it on a computer, but before I had a computer, I used to have it hand manual. And it's hell of an important to keep good records of your birds. Not so much the features of the bird, but more the relationship of the birds. You can also obviously make notes of problems with long tails or bad feathering or whatever. I don't actually do that because I think I know most of my birds. But what is important is to know the relationship between the cock and the hen when you pair them. Now what I do is I normally catch the hens first that I want to breed with. And then I put them in show cages and have a look at them. And then I will then go to my records and find a bird that's related to a cock bird that's related to the hen. Whether it's a close relative or an uncle or an aunt or at least a grandfather, it doesn't matter to me really. I look it up and then I catch the birds that are suitable from the record point of view. And then I look physically and look for the visual things that everybody knows about. If the spots can help, or if the mask isn't deep enough, then I would not use it obviously. And if I would visually pair the birds together. I mean pair the birds visually after looking at the records. If there's no relationship, I won't pair them. I just don't even bother. I mean, I just think that I'm wasting my time if I'm not breeding related birds. If I get a new bird in, I said earlier I can count on one hand the new birds I've had in. I had a couple of birds from Fred Wright, and that brought me the violet factor that we were talking about. It was a violet and a cobalt, which I didn't have any dark factor birds. I bought from a friend of Manus.
Right now, end of the year it'll be double the price.
Yeah. I think it's worth it though. I think it's worth having a good program. I'm actually seriously thinking about, because my problem is when I have a problem with my program, I've got to phone this guy in Brazil. And his English isn't all that good, and we have problems.
And Fred, that'd be maybe a good idea for the club to buy something like that and then distribute it to members at a certain fee, because you've still got the discs.
Yeah, sure. That's the way to do it, is to...
Because
John, you probably confirm this. It's just an ordinary family thing, isn't it? It's the same sort of program as you'd use for getting the pedigree of a person, isn't it?
Yeah, similar.
What do you call it? The
family tree.
Family tree. That's all it is.
Yeah, but it does preferred pairings. So you can put a cock in and it gives you all the hens that are related.
Yeah.
And
now mine doesn't, you see. Yes, mine does too. But it doesn't, I believe your program, you can ask for cousins or second cousins. Mine can't, it just gives you all the birds.
That gives cousins, brothers and sisters, aunts, paternal uncles, and it can actually give you how much % blood of certain lines you're breeding it's got in. Jeez. It does all that.
That would be the program to go for, I think. I certainly wouldn't recommend mine because it's, in Portuguese it's too bloody difficult.
None of us can read Portuguese and anything.
Yeah, but I've got so used to it now, you know, I like it. And it's, I'll show it to you, it's okay. So I think that's the important thing is the record keeping. When we get to obvious pairings, you know, when you pair a cock and a hen, it's okay, somebody will answer it. You pair you find you got a cock that's weak on spots, so you go and look for a hen that's good on spots, or you find a cock that maybe the shoulder's a bit small, you get a hen that's got a wide shoulder. I call those obvious pairings. You know, it's just so obvious that you can see it and you do it. But I think if we look at some of the individual problems that we have, and we'll start with flecking, which I think is a major problem. I haven't got much for touch wood, but what I do with flecked birds is if you've got a really good flecked cock, which I tend to try to avoid, but I've got one or two, but because they're good I keep them. I would never pair it, for instance, to a flecked hen. But a flecked hen can do you some good too. Invariably they've got good spots, so you want to get the spot. And if you breed a clean cock to a flecked hen, usually you get clean birds. You get the odd flecked one, but you normally get clean. Except if the cock came from a flecked hen, then you've got a problem. And that's where record keeping is quite important, where I said you can make notes. So if you breed if you've got a clean cock and a flecked hen, and they produce a clean cock, don't pair that cock to a flecked hen. For sure, you'll get flecked birds. So if you're going to use a flecked hen because you want to spot, try and make sure the family of the cock is clear. It didn't come from a flecked hen as well. So it's quite easy to look up, because you can just look up, even in your book, you can look up if it was an opaline hen. Sometimes you can be sure it was flecked. So you make sure that it didn't come from that pairing. So flecking to me is a hell of a problem, and I don't actually like flecked birds even when I'm judging, but sometimes when you're judging, Mike knows and you guys know, you get such an obviously good bird and it's got a bit of flecking. Now what we're doing now is at the next judges meeting, Reinhard has taken pictures of various degrees of flecking, and then we want the judges to decide what is going to be acceptable and what isn't acceptable at that meeting. And then once they've taken that decision, hopefully when we get our next magazine, we'll have it in the magazine. You know, these are acceptable, these are not acceptable. That's the only way we can do it, because other than banning it completely, which they tried in England, and it was a complete balls up. I mean, it was such a shambles. I was actually there at the time where they said, they made a ruling that a flecked bird cannot win its class. So they were putting these birds second, and it was such a shambles that they had to change that ruling and leave it to the judges to decide whether it was, how severely penalize it or not. And that's one of the reasons why I've said to the guys that please let's ban it, because we create so many problems for ourselves. You must just penalize it accordingly. But that's also difficult, so we're trying to look at that one. The other problem is this long tail thing I mentioned to you. It's a swine of a thing because it's recessive, and it can just come out of nowhere. Suddenly you find, I mean, I had a cinnamon the other day, which I've never had a long tail, and I bred this little, it was a lousy bird actually, I actually got rid of it. And it had a long bloody tail. Nowhere in the family was there a long tail, and suddenly this thing pops up. Now, it could go back to, I had a hen from Menekini in 1991, and I looked back, and this thing is related to that hen. But the long tail has been dormant for 5 years. Suddenly it comes, and this happens, and there's just nothing you can do about it. But I actually gave the bird to a friend's son who wanted a budgie. It's a horrible bloody bird.
Now, Fred, you get two chicks in a nest, one long tail, one normal.
Yeah.
That's the normal.
Yeah.
There's no percentage of
No, there's none. As I said, this thing was lying dormant for 5 years. And there's no percentage, and I think I wouldn't say don't breed with a long tail, because the chances are the youngsters will not have long tails. And invariably, they're nice birds. You know, they're strong birds, and so I wouldn't get rid of them. But as I said, when I first got the Menekini birds, I would say that nearly 50% of my birds had long tails. Now I reckon it's about 5%. So I slowly got rid of them just by careful breeding with them. But I never stopped breeding with them. I mean, some of those Menekini birds were really ugly birds. They were really ugly. They had funny little bodies with long tails. And but they all had shoulder. They were all strong birds. So they had a use. They had some use for you, those birds. When we come to colour, I don't know why. I don't think it's ever been proven why a cinnamon bird can clean up a rough bird. I mean, when you think about it, it doesn't make sense. It's just that the feathering is finer, obviously. But I've used a lot of cinnamon to clean up rough birds. So I would say a cinnamon hen is probably more used to you than a cinnamon cock. The only problem is, of course, you're going to get a lot of split cinnamons when you breed that normal cock to the cinnamon hen. You're going to get a lot of split cinnamon cocks and cinnamon hens. You must be a bit careful that you don't get overrun with cinnamons, because it can happen quite easily. I don't really notice I've only got 1 or 2 cinnamons there, but I've got more cinnamon hens because I use them for spot and to tidy up the feather in the rough bird. So if you've got a really rough feathered cock, it's not a bad idea to try and pair it to a cinnamon. Again, provided it's related and there's a good relationship. Opalines, you again probably noticed I haven't got many. In fact, I haven't got a single opaline cock. I actually never use opaline cocks. I use opaline hens, and I use them for the spot only. And invariably they fleck because they've got a lot of melanin, and a big spot creates flecking. But I have to accept that and live with it and say, well, if I get some fleck birds, tough, but I'm going to get the spot better. And opalines just seem to have that better spot. And so I say, if you want to improve the spot on your birds, invariably you've got to use opaline. You don't, not all the time. Nothing is sort of concrete in budgies. You know, there's no fixed rule. It's all a little bit dicey, but generally I think opaline is good to use with a normal cock to improve your spots. I think also, I don't know why, because it's a colour, but I like to use the grey factor in all my pairings. I like to have a grey green with a light green, or grey with a sky blue. One or the other, I like it to be grey, a grey factor bird. And at one time I had a whole lot of grey greens, and I wasn't unhappy with that, but I also had quite a lot of sky blues because the peanut bird was a light green split blue. So I got quite a lot of blues from that pairing. And then I put the grey greens to the sky blues, and I produced a lot of light greens. So that's why I'm, at the moment, probably predominantly light green. But it's come about as from the grey green to the sky blue. Now, with those light greens, I would obviously try and find a grey green or grey cock. Those young light green hens I got there. I would put a grey factor bird. If you look at the show results in England, I think the last 8 years, the VS Club show, which is the main show, I think the last 8 years it's been a grey factor bird. Either a grey green or grey, or a bird that carries cinnamon grey or whatever. So to me, grey is very important.
Stronger birds.
It's a strong bird, and I don't know why, because as I said, it's a feather. But I don't know the reason. But I've just discovered that it has an influence. And if you look at most of the good studs in Europe, most of them are based on grey greens or greys, and therefore, I've also actually proven that grey is an important factor in your colours. The thing with feather is, I think probably one of our biggest concerns is to get the feather quality right. I think if you take a really rough bird, I was asked a question this morning, do these big hens breed? Yes, they do breed. I mean, they don't breed as well as the small hens, I'll admit that. But they do breed, and I take the view that if I get 2 or 3 good chicks from a big hen, that's okay. I'm happy. I'd rather have that than 6 or 7 poor chicks. So I don't mind. And what I do with the feather is I never use a really fine feathered bird because I think that there's a history. I don't think they can do much for you anymore. Except if you're talking about Latinos. And incidentally, when I said I've only bought a handful of birds, I'm excluding the Latinos, obviously. I bought those Latinos a couple of years ago in England. I don't know why I bought them. I just felt I wanted Latinos, but they're not up to much. Flying around there and have a bit of colour. But if you take a rough bird and then you want to get a semi-rough bird, in other words, what they call an intermediate feather, and try and pair them together. The theory of a rough feather and a yellow feather or fine feather doesn't work. It doesn't work because I found that the recessive factors in the fine feathered bird becomes almost dominant, and you get more poor birds than good birds. So I would look more into what they call an intermediate with a rough. A lot of guys are anti-rough feathered birds, but they again are on the bigger birds. The rough feather comes with the bigger birds. We get the rough feather birds where they turn up, where the feather turns. I don't actually worry about that because that was another thing I got a lot of at Menikini was these birds turning their feather. And what causes that is the down. It's very heavy. It's such a heavy down that it actually starts interfering with the growth of the feather and turns it over. When Jeff Atwood was here, when the National was at Vereeniging, I had a sky blue cock, which was bred from a Menikini bird. And I'd entered it in the show, and the day before it went, bloody feathers went funny. So I left it at home. And then after the show, Jeff came and stayed with me. And he's in that flight and he saw the sky blue cock. He said, "Did you have that on the show?" And I said, "No." He said, "Why? It's a hell of a good bird." I said, "Because the bloody feather turned up." So he said, "Oh, you must pull him out." The bloody bird was just carved all around the neck. But it bred for me, and its chicks were okay. So it is a problem, and I'm sure it's the down that starts interfering with that. But I would breed with them. It wouldn't frighten me. I would breed with a bird like that because I found that the chicks are not. The chicks don't have that problem. Some would, I guess, but it's not a problem for me. It's not a major problem. Those are sort of the pairings. Are there any questions so far?
I've heard some people talk about direction of feather.
Yeah.
And also the length of the feather. Now, does that go according to the size of the bird? Because you have the small bird with a long feather. I'm talking about the around the head, that type of thing.
Yeah, okay. When they talk about directional feather, they're talking about the head.
Mm-hmm. Do you breed to try and get the direction of feather? Or do you take that into consideration?
I do take it into consideration. Yeah, I obviously do. It certainly gives you the width.
So in other words, you look at the when you get pair two birds up, you don't necessarily pluck the feather or have a look at the direction of the feather, but you look at the size of the head.
Yeah, and I do pluck the feather, and I can normally take it over here.
Mm-hmm. What do you actually look for there?
I actually look for length. And you can almost predetermine what it is if you look at the bird. and you pull that flank feather out here, and you can almost be sure it's going to be long if it's a rough bird, and it's going to be short if it's a fine bird. So, yes, I do it, but it's
Not
you
too
don't
much
really
emphasis
need to
on
know. The directional feather is hell of important for width, but once you've got the width, it doesn't become a major issue anymore, because it'll stay, you'll keep the width of thing. I think the narrow, small birds, obviously the feather goes straight up backwards. But look at that when you pair up. Yeah, it's important. Any other questions?
If you breed, say for instance, 4 chicks from a super pair, 3 good ones and 1 weak one, will you use that weak one, or?
Let me tell you what I do. I have a card, which is one manual thing I do have, for every pairing. I write down the ring number of the chick. I've got the parents at the top, obviously, cock and hen. The date it laid, the ring number, and then I have a remark. And I assess the birds at about 5 or 6 weeks. First, you're going to assess them early when you feel them. You feel there's a strong bird. You just mentally note that. And then at about 5 or 6 weeks, I assess them. And then I write, I put very good, fair or poor. Now, what I do is, I will never breed. Now, what happens is, you know how birds change. Now, you look at a bird at 6 weeks, and then in a year, it's a different bird. Before I pair that bird, I go and look at that card. If it was poor, I don't use it. Sell it to you guys.
But I'm talking about the mother and the father, 2 top quality birds,
Yeah.
and 3 of the 4 offsprings.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Good.
One's bad.
Not very bad, but weaker than the others. Will you use that? Will that
No.
carry the?
No, because
The
what
quality?
I've just said is I would look at my card,
Yeah.
and I find that if you assess them at about 6 weeks, that's usually the best.
Because say for instance you only pair that weak one.
Ah,
That's
no.
from 2 super birds.
Well, I'd give them another go, Deon. I'd let the pair
Back
breed
to,
again.
back to family.
Because
No,
it may be just something bad. You know, a lot of problems develop in the egg even. You know, and it could be that the chick wasn't nourished properly and it
So
didn't.
genetically it will have.
Yeah, but the genetics are okay. But if you look at them at 6 weeks and then you find a weak link, or sort of a weak sister, you know, I actually wouldn't use that bird.
What are the chances of you breeding something good out of that though?
Good, yeah, good. But I think,
If
I
you've
think
got 3 good ones, it's a waste of time using
that's
that.
right. That's exactly right. And I just take the view you've got enough birds without having to use that bird, even though it looks good, and the chances are that it would breed okay. You know, you really don't know. But if I like when I was starting off again, when I came to South Africa, I would use that bird because I wanted to build up numbers. But once you've got a decent number of birds, you can actually afford to say, no, I won't use that bird. I'd rather use the ones that are marked good or very good, you know. And there again, it's you can't expect to keep all this in your head. You've got to write it down somewhere. And my program doesn't allow for that. I can't. You can, but it's a bit complicated. So I just write it on the card.
Because many times you look at birds in the nest, and as you say, about 6 weeks old, this bird looks quite nice. And then you forget about the bird, and the thing when they're going through the molt, that looks really terrible, and eventually these things certainly come up.
They come back again.
But now, Fred, also the blue factor. The theory is that, and I think it's a known fact, that they take a lot longer to develop, and a lot of bloods, even at 6 weeks, there might be 4 in the nest, as you say, one is weaker than those. Bloods tend to sell the blue birds a lot quicker than they sell the green birds because they haven't developed as quick.
That's true. That's true. Some of them, it's not 100% all the time. I mean, you do get cases where blues, even as young birds, can be very, very powerful birds.
Yeah.
But the slow developers obviously are all the recessives are slow developers. Latinos, recessive pieds, albinos. The one that's probably a bit different is the lacewing. They tend to develop fairly quickly. Don't know why. And then cinnamons are usually slow developers. But I don't know. The blue is not. Sometimes it's the same with most colours, I think. Just depends on the makeup of the bird. And you know, as I said earlier, you can get a problem in the egg, and that problem will come up in the chick. A lot of people believe that birds can get a disease inside them, and then when they lay the egg is the chick hatches, but it dies because it's undernourished. I actually, before I breed, I put all the birds on this, what the hell do you call it? Stuff that's Pieter sells.
Ostriflora.
No. It's a replacement of terramycin, doxybiotic. I give them a week. I put them all on. I give it to all the birds, but it's more important for the hens. For a week before I pair up, just in case there's something in the gut, you know, it'll clean it up.
Introdex?
I give Introdex, once a week to all the birds. Yeah, I use Introdex, Carbosol, and the other one. I use a combined 3. All made by the same people. The one is a vitamin C, which, funny enough, if you read manuals or books on bird diseases, they say birds don't need vitamin C. But that guy, Mervyn John, who makes us Introdex, he's convinced that it does good. So I use it, whether it does good or not, I don't know. But
Won't the bird only retain what it needs?
yeah, that's what they say. But I must say, since I've been on to Introdex, I've had less trouble, I think. I think most guys are using it now. Some people say that it's improved their fertility. I wouldn't say it's improved mine.
The birds are obviously, maybe why they say it, because the birds are a lot healthier.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
go down.
Yeah.
But just for the blokes, the Introdex probiotics, Laddie's going to be marketing that stuff. I don't know if he started, but he's got the agency in this part of the country for probiotics.
That's actually good news, because it was a bloody pain to have to get it from back home.
Yeah.
It's going to go up in hell in price, because you know it comes from England and a pound, and the rand is so crazy now. You know, I don't know. I was saying to Gerald Binks the other day on the phone. You know, we used to just give vitamin B12, Cytocon, and Abidec. I mean, that was, everybody did it. And we had good breeding. We never had any problems. Now we've got bloody Introdex and this, that, and everything else. I don't know if it's any better, honestly. You know, when I started with Budgies, all of us gave Abidec and Cytocon. Abidec, and that's all we gave our birds. And we had bloody good birds, they're healthy birds.
We used to give Crucible too, what the kids have.
Yeah. No, I never did that. But,
This Introdex it's a probiotic.
yeah,
And you give different types of probiotics.
that's right.
Can you give him, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, no. In fact, there's a competitor to Introdex in England, which he claims his stuff's better, but I think it's all the same. So I don't know, I use it.
Can I just come in on this one? I went to Outcrosses and I said to him, what about this probiotics? And he says to me, man, I'm selling the same thing, it's just a different name. It's called Ostriflora. It's very cheap with
Ostriflora.
Ostriflora.
It's for ostriches.
Chicks, ostrich chicks. And he says, that's what he...
And it's a probiotic.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because it's probably a third of the price.
Yes, yeah. Oh, no, so it's very cheap. Compared to, Ostriflora.
Ostriflora, I remember that. Yeah, I think we just go on to feeding for a minute. I buy my seed from that guy that Springs, at least Nigel, Agricor. They mix a mixture for me, and I buy a ton because I supply. Some of the guys like Dr. Aaron, they come and take some from me. But a ton is a good quantity for them to deliver. They don't charge you. But I believe that guy in Pretoria is quite good. Has anybody got experience
Yeah,
with
it's
it?
also a brand. Agricor brand.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking of another guy.
Iman.
Now you're talking about that bloke near you. What's his name?
It's Iman.
He's got a house on the corner there.
That's
Yes,
right.
that's Iman.
Is his seed any good?
Well, I bought white millet the other day from him. I'll tell you, that was fantastic white millet. But the Jap millet was dusty as well. But the white millet was very, very good.
I think Reinhard buys from him now.
Yeah.
doesn't he? I was going to phone Reinhard and ask him what the seed was like. Because
There's
I'm
also
about
white
to order
millet.
more seed.
There's a white millet ready that I got there. That stuff is beautiful. Right, I got it last week. But the Jap millet is very dirty, very dusty.
And the canary seed, man?
I didn't get any canary. I got it from that Indian bloke here in Joburg.
Corrie.
No, it was real complex.
But that's the same as everybody. It comes from Canada, doesn't it? Everybody's got the same canary seed. And you mix your own seed.
Concrete mix.
Now my mixture is I use 50% canary seed, 25% Jap, and 25% white millet. That's it. And they mix it for me and give it to me in bags. Then I add groats, for Dr. Harvey. I add that in when I mix up in a bowl.
Yeah.
I just put a shovel of groats and I mix it all up. And then you could see there I feed sunflower seed. They eat it like hell.
Don't feed it sprouted though.
No, just chuck it in. And I feed dry oats. I never feed soaked oats.
Why?
I had too much trouble, Mike. I used to do it in Rhodesia, man. I lost chicks. I lost little chicks. Now when I stopped, it all went away. Never. I haven't fed soaked oats for 15 years. And I don't lose little chicks like I used to. Yes, I used to lose these chicks. And it's so bloody heartbreaking, when you see the egg is fertile and then the chick comes and the bloody thing dies. And I used to wreck my head, and I just thought one day, bugger it, I'll try without this.
No, you on your bear spoke about some bacteria that if you leave it soaked for too long, more than 12 hours, some bacteria that builds up in it. And I don't know where you got
I used to soak mine in bloody, what's that stuff?
Salad.
It's something like that. And it still didn't help. I actually used that, it's an
But
English.
grouse is a good replacement though. The birds love that stuff.
Grapes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't soak it either. I
just
feed it dry. And I found that, in fact, I was speaking to Dr. Robertson one day about soaked oats, and he reckons that dry oats is actually better for the birds than soaked oats. For the birds. But it's amazing how they go for grapes, for oats, dry oats. They flatten that before they eat the birdseed. So that's basically what I give, and then I give my birds a soft food all the year round. I don't do it only when I'm breeding. I normally do it in the evening, about 4. I go and put it in the flights, and then when I'm breeding, I give a teaspoon, just quite a big teaspoon, to each breeding thing until they start getting chicks. And as the chicks grow, I put more and more, sometimes up to 3 teaspoons when the chicks are big. And it's like all soft food, the birds have to get used to it. First they don't eat it. Now, my soft food, which I've printed some out if you guys want to take it, I find they go for this. And, I was in England once, and I was staying with Gerald, and he was just giving bread and milk, and I said to him, this is nonsense, you just give your birds a decent soft food. So we went to the grocery shop and got all the stuff, mixed it all up, made soft food, and I was actually leaving the next day, and I came home and I phoned him about 2 weeks later. I said, how's the soft food? No, he said, the birds won't eat it. I said, how long did you try? I said, this guy's had 40 years experience. And he just quit after a week. So I said, geez, Gerald, come on, man. Just keep persevering, even if you throw it all away the next day. And now his birds just eat it. He uses exactly the same as I do. And there's nothing left in the morning. In fact, if I give mine to the birds at 4 o'clock, by 5 o'clock it's gone. There's just nothing left. And I think it's good. I think it helps with the chicks. But it's important to give it to them in the non-breeding season so that they're used to it.
It's not too much so they can't wait for the next meal to come along.
No, I don't give them too much. Also in the flight, they'll take what they want and they'll leave what they don't want. So I must say in the flights there's usually some left over because I put quite a big dish in, But when they're feeding chicks, there's nothing left. They flatten it. Any other questions? Any other things we can talk about? I think when I pair up, I normally put the hen in first, leave her for about 3 days. If she doesn't go in the box, I often have a worry about whether I should leave her or take her out, but I sometimes take them out. I think you can see if they've got no interest at all, But because she hasn't got in the nest box doesn't mean to say she's not going to breed. Sometimes if you put a cock in, it stimulates her and she goes in. Other times she's running away from the cock, so you're not sure whether...
Close the nest box off then?
Yes, I do. I do close it off to see how they get on. I've also had birds fight, and after the fight they have a good breeding season. But I've also I've got a grey-green cock there his eyes was taken completely out by the hen. I had this hen in the thing, and so when I had this bloody trouble with my leg, I forgot about this bird, and I went in there one day and I thought, she'd been there about 2 weeks, and I put the cock in and she just took his eye completely out. And it's because I'd left her too long, she'd become the boss of the box. Yeah. And he's still there, he's okay, but one eye, I took him out to the vet, and it was old Dr. Russell. He buggered around with it, and he said his eye's gone, but he's okay. He actually breathes.
But you know that Dave Russell had a very severe heart attack.
No.
Actually, a clot went through his heart.
When was that?
2 weeks ago.
I didn't know that, no.
Not yet, he's busy building.
And that clot just moved into his heart?
Yeah.
Yes. Frightening, eh? The guy looked fit, didn't he?
Yes, very much so.
Any other questions? I don't think there's much more I can say.
Are you planning for a good season this year?
Yeah, Mike, I think so.
These blokes now wanting to know when they can come and buy. You've got to breed the birds first.
I've got to pair up first, I think, and then see what's there.
No.
I've obviously got some birds that I will be able to sell later when I've paired up.
No.
But I'm hoping for a good season, yeah. I'm actually, as I said to you, I'm getting new fronts, and unfortunately it's delaying me, but I think what I might do is just go with the old ones and change the new ones as it happens. I mean, I don't want to wait anymore, because I want to actually catch the rings on the 1st of October.
Fred, now, when you play, you got your fronts and all that kind of, when would you suggest the best stuff is putting the birds together?
I work backwards, Mike. I work backwards from the 1st of October. So I say you can ring a chick at about a week, okay? About a week, maybe sometimes earlier, sometimes later. So you go back 7 days from the end of September, and then 20 days to hatch, and then 10 days to lay. So you're talking about 40 days. So we're nearly there, in fact. And then you put the hen in a few days before, so you're talking about 44, 45 days.
Well, you're not really worried about the season as such?
No.
From the birds that are either must go down?
Yeah.
Ain't the rings the 1st of November?
1st November, sorry.
Oh, it's not the 1st of October.
Sorry, you went back from the 1st November.
Maybe this is something that might come into the Constitution shortly.
No, sorry, it is the 1st of November. You work back from the 1st of November.
Yeah.
That's
40 days.
So about 40 days. So we're getting, usually towards the end of of August, you start, thinking about it. But I don't know. I think I really don't think anybody can tell when a bird really wants to breed. I think some of them it's obvious, others I don't know. It's difficult. That's right.
Fred, sorry, where's the toilet?
Straight down the passage.
Thanks. Excuse me.
If you walk down the passage, there's a door right at the end.
Thank you.
Okay, look, I don't know who wants these. I just
Yes, I'll have one.
we can do more if we need more.
Put it in our newspaper.
That actually went into budget goal.
Okay, then it's got.
Fred, in developing a stud like yours, you've basically been through that. For the beginners especially, what is the best way to start? To go out and just buy, or to go and buy good? Is that going to...
No, I'll do some more.
So,
Look, it's hell of a hard to say. I think
you-
you must buy decent stock at the beginning, and I think you must buy from somebody that's got good birds that wins, regularly on the show.
and the number of birds,
To start with,
yeah, 2 cocks and 3 hens, or...
yeah, but I would just buy 2 pairs. Depends what you can afford.
Yeah.
But one thing I think for sure is that once you start buying from a breeder and you're successful or reasonably successful, you must stay with that guy. To buy here, there, and everywhere is just...
You never ever brought up a stud.
that's right. You get a collection of birds instead of a stud.
Yeah.
You do really. And if you're buying from Marketing or me or Aaron or whoever, and you're happy, if you're not happy, then you must change.
Yeah.
If what you're buying from me isn't suiting you, then you must go to somebody else. But if you're happy, then you must go back to that guy. But always go back with the ring numbers. And any decent breeder should be able to, give you a decent pedigree or give you something related to that bird. And I also think that, if a guy says, that's the son of that, and I think you must ask him to show you. Because it's hell of easy to say that's the son of that, and that's, there was that famous saying from Pilkington in England, every bird was from the Pilkington bird, Oh, that's from the winner, he had like 1,000 birds from that winner, And I think you have to, if a guy's worth his salt, he'll show you in the book or give you a pedigree, or if he's got a computer, even better, look on the screen.
Yeah.
Then you know it can't be bullshit, And a lot of guys don't keep decent records, and you can see when you go into an aviary, you see a lot of different kind of birds, I don't mean different kinds, but different
Looking
good ones, bad ones, good, you must be a bit careful because, this guy,
doesn't know what he's doing.
maybe he's just a breeder of birds and he's not trying to build a stud of birds.
We do encourage, we call it culling or selecting the cat. I've got a stud of 100 birds, selecting the 40 best and getting rid of those.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Without a doubt.
Because the hen doesn't breed, you tend to go to the next best hen.
Yeah, no, I would, you must be very selective, man.
Ruthless.
Yeah. It's better to sell those birds even to a pet shop because all they do is eat your seed.
Yeah.
And get some money to buy seed. But you have to be very selective. You have to be a bit ruthless, actually. When I bought those birds from Enikini, I bred a lot of birds that wouldn't fly. And it used to annoy me. I used to walk in there and they were running all over the bloody floor. And one day I got so cross, I went in there and I just wrung their necks. I didn't even worry what they come from with, and I just wrung all their necks. now that I got rid of those bloody things. And that was
Is that something you can actually breed into your birds?
Yeah, I've no doubt about it. I mean,
Feathers don't develop.
yeah, there's no question that I must have killed about 12 birds, but I just got rid of them. I couldn't stand this bloody birds running around.
Nothing walking around on the floor there.
No, there's one or two that have lost their flights.
Yeah,
and they can't fly. But I don't have a bird that can't fly. And I did this. In fact, I did this about 3 years ago. I just got the Dawn Arena. I couldn't stand it. I mean, it was just annoying me so, and you breed these beautiful birds, and they're just running around on the floor. So, and I don't know whether you guys ever went to Manikini, but you had to be careful where you walked. There was you went there.
Yeah.
Birds all over the floor.
Yeah. 80% of them was on the floor.
Yeah. And I brought that into my birds, unfortunately. But that's another thing you got to be careful of. You can bring such a bad feature into your bird so quickly.
I think there you got to maybe look to this, as you say, some of the birds, the feathers might not go and something like that, just to be careful.
Oh yeah.
So they come out the
Look,
nest,
everybody has feather problems. Somebody was saying this morning about mite. Was it you?
Yeah.
That can happen easily. What I do is I spray my flights and my birds with Virkon, sort of once a fortnight.
Yes.
I just spray them on sitting on the perches, And in fact, what I get on Dr. Aaron's got one of these electric sprayers, and he lends it to me for a Sunday, and I soak them with it. I think it generally tidies them up and kills any spores that are around. Especially if it's a nice hot day, you can spray the
So
perches.
it doesn't do the birds any harm though?
No.
Isn't it dangerous?
No, it's not at all. No, you can spray them directly on the bird in his face, won't do anything.
Doesn't hurt them. And also, it doesn't affect my hands. Some people say it affects their hands.
No. You can use it as a sterilizer as well for cleaning your cages.
Well, if you go to the quarantine station, you're in Jan Smith's. That's all they use.
Yes.
They wash the floors with Virkon.
Everything, yes.
They wash out all the cages. It's a hell of a good product, that Virkon. It really is good. And a French mold, I'll tell you something, that stuff fixes French mold. It doesn't fix it, prevents it. But you've got to be bloody liberal with it. I mix a teaspoon, the measure, I think it's 5 milliliters, a little blue cup that you get with it, into a liter of hot water. And then I just let it cool down. And every day I spray in the nest box. I pull the inner box out, spray, and if there's chicks I spray over the top. And honestly guys, I haven't had a French mortar for maybe 3-4 years. And then I put other guys onto it and they say, I still get French mortar. Reinhardt was one. How often do you spray? Not all the time. It's no good. You've got to spray every day. And John Huntley, he said he used it, and then I said, well, I can't understand it, John, because I haven't got French mortar, and he's getting it. So I said, show me your mix, and he was mixing it wrong. And the other thing, it's a strange thing, this. Once that color goes out of that, it's gone. It's finished.
Yeah, it must be the pinkish color.
Yeah. And if you leave it in your... That's why I've got you can see through my sprayer. As soon as that color goes whitish, I chuck it away. I remix it. It's a mixture of Virkon. But I spray every day. Only once the eggs come. I don't spray before they lay. I clean the cages, obviously, with Duromitex. I soak them, put them in, and then once they start laying, then I start spraying with Virkon.
Is it helpful for red mite as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
And then I just spray the whole the bird room, spray that as well.
So why do you use Duromitex if you use Virkon?
I don't know, it's just a habit. I just soak them once at the beginning of the season. I soak them in a bucket, and you probably shouldn't have to, but I do. You get into habits and you stay with those habits.
Your soft food mix, you haven't got a base like this. This is which is binding in here. You only use this.
That's all. Oh, that's all I use, yeah.
Because I'm a canary breeder as well. I get from
Sitting on the edge.
what's this place called Lucy.
The chair went forward.
Rusk crumbs
Yeah,
that I use as a base for my soft food for my canaries.
right.
I see there's no base for this.
Well, if you look at that, most of that stuff is porridge, is
yes,
baby porridge.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay.
one thing you must be careful of is when you put it in a blender, just give it a few shakes.
Yeah.
Otherwise it becomes gooey, and the birds won't eat it. So it must be crumbly.
Yes.
In the
That's why I'm asking, because the crumbs, the rusk crumbs, keeps it crummy.
Yes, it would do, but I find that Nestum and that Cerelac and the oats, I find it's the
Do
same.
you use the ordinary oats or the pinhead oats?
No, I use jungle oats
Yes.
because I find they're smaller
Yes.
than the other one. Then I break it up first into nearly a powder. The oats.
Because the pinhead oats is just about powder. It's very fine.
Yeah, I haven't used it to be honest. Who makes that?
You can only buy it at Pick and Pay.
Okay, and it's called.
Pinhead oats.
Oh, I saw look. Because it's actually a bind you have to break the jungle
Yes,
oats up.
yeah.
I use my wife's mixer,
Yes.
But I found this to be successful. I actually got it. It's not my idea. I got it from Pieter in Brazil. Now he actually puts bananas in his, but I found it made it too gooey, And so and then when I started with the Cerelac or Nestum, whatever it is, I found that they didn't need it. I couldn't understand why the Pieter was having such good results and I wasn't. And then I thought of this banana. So then one day I was looking for the stuff and I saw banana flavor.
Yes.
And I used, and boy, they went straight through. I think they smell it, As soon as I switched to banana flavor, they started eating it. So that was just experimenting.
Well, this is basically the mix that I use
Is it?
for my canaries.
Yeah.
Except I've got the spinach, the dehydrated spinach.
Ah, yes.
Put it in here as well. And that other, the rusk crumbs.
Yeah. You see, what you're using the rusk crumbs as your base, aren't you?
Yes, yeah.
And I'm using the sort of Nestum as
Yeah,
a base.
yeah.
But I mix up a whole tub of it, then I just use what I want every night. With the egg, I put the boiled egg in.
Yes, yeah.
Just break it up. So there we are.
Any further questions?
No. I've learned a lot. So.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it.
Very much, thank you very much
Okay.
Always interesting.
for your time.
Pleasure.
We hope we haven't tied you out too much.
No, I'm fine. As I say, I'm really fine.
We're really pleased to see you looking in the condition that you are.
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
That's good.
I think what happened, Mike, is they got rid of the infection.
Yeah.
It was the infection that was dragging me down.
Yeah.
And as I say, I had a little fall down the step the other day, and I hurt my shin. Otherwise, I was actually walking on one crutch,
Yeah.
and I'll be okay. It's a bit bruised, but it'll come out.
No, I mean, that's a minor. As I say, thanks very much. We do appreciate your time and also this.
Okay, I can knock some more up if you want some.
No, no.